Out of curiosity, if of the people in this class, who amongst you are seriously or semi-seriously considering being an FC? If you are, just hop an X, type an X in the general public chat. So if you're considering actually being an FC rather than curious about how it all works, just type an X in general public. I'm not
How?
gonna. I'm not.
This is a learning environment.
Can I
And you
claim
need
the Fifth
to interrupt
Amendment? Okay, so formation, fleet admiral. Yep. Okay. Vector Ready FCs, Aris, Buzz Lightyear, like that. John, Jace, X Machine, and Jeremy. Okay. Don't worry, he won't be used in evidence against you. Okay. So very quickly, because maybe, I mean, not all of you know, first of all, who I even am. I am visiting a chase. And I first tumbled into Redfed about 8.5 years ago. And I was RVB chair for a bit, and I've had a couple of spells as Red Federation's CEO. But my principal claim to fame is that I'm Red Fed's top killer by virtue of the fact that I've just hung around blowing ships up perhaps longer than anyone else. And I've spent a monstrous number of hours as FC for Red Fed and bumping about the place in Losec. I don't claim to be a good FC, never claim that. There are many FCs out there better than me, but I do know most of the basics, and this is what this class is all about. So I'm going to make the following assumptions before we sally forth. So let's check out whether these assumptions are valid. First of all, I'm assuming that you know the basics of how to navigate in space and move between systems. Probably shouldn't be an FC if you don't know how to do that. I'm making the assumption that you know what a fleet commander is. So let's check out that assumption first of all. What the hell is a fleet commander anyway? What is the job of a fleet commander?
To kill the fleet.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, everybody in RVB is going to agree with that, but the more official version?
Moving the fleet and calling out targets.
Moving the fleet and calling out targets. Yeah, that's certainly part of it. Any more?
I would say like organizing the fleet to make sure they're all doing the same thing, or like working towards the same goal.
Yeah. Okay.
To make sure everybody survives.
Oh, it's definitely not that. Well, yeah, because it's extremely unlikely to ever happen. At least not with us, anyway.
Sure, everybody has fun.
That's a good one. I like that answer. Okay. We'll keep exploring that question as we go along, I think. I'm assuming, and this may be a reckless assumption, but for those people that X'd up, that are seriously or semi-seriously considering being an FC, I'm making the assumption that you know the basics of the different types of Tech 1 ships, battle cruiser down. If you don't know that, then before you would start FC, and particularly before you career out into LOSEC, then you definitely need to go into the ship tree and familiarize yourself with those. I'm making the assumption that you know the basics of the differences between high sec, low sec, and null sec. Again, if you don't know the basic differences, again, probably being an FC is not for you right now. I'm making the assumption you have a microphone. This may also be reckless, but you certainly can't FC without one. I'm making the assumption that you have a competent or a relatively competent, in my case, mastery, perhaps is the wrong word, of the basics of the game. And certainly don't FC until you have that basic level of competence over the basics of the game. I'm making the assumption you're interested in being an FC. So are those assumptions reasonable?
Yep.
Okay. So So this, as I will be a class primarily on how to be a red versus blue FC, taking a roam out to low sec. Okay. Now the reason that I make that distinction particularly is because being an FC and RVB actual at the weekend is different. It's a different, requires some different skill sets and a different approach, and we'll cover that in a different class. Being an FC in nullsec has different considerations. Being an FC in wormhole space has special considerations, which will be covered in other classes. So this class is particularly about being an FC in RVB, which in itself is very different in lots of ways from being an FC for any other corp, heading out to LOSEC. Okay, so I'm going to talk for a bit, and then I'm going to stream my screen for a bit, and then I'm going to get you to do some bits and pieces. So don't doze off too early, okay? Because I will be asking questions. First of all, there are 3 ways to FC fleet command a fleet. First of all, you can do it what we call autonomously. This is where the FC gathers the fleet, but basically allows its members to generate their own content in their own way. And to an extent, this is what happens in our PvP practice fleets in Tadaki. But you could, in theory, throw up a fleet, give people some ships, and say, "Okay, lads, knock yourselves out. Go and do whatever you like, and I'll tag along." That's not what people conventionally think an FC does, but it is fleet commanding in a way. You've set up a fleet, you've made a decision about how it's going to be run, and you've facilitated people's fun. So that's one way of doing it. Next way of doing it is cooperatively. That's where your FC asks the fleet what it wants to do, and then seeks a consensus about how to do it before he or her starts issuing any instructions. Now, this is a bit more common in EVE Online. Some people are keen on FCing cooperatively. It's never been my style, and it's quite challenging, but that's your second option. Now, your third option is overwhelmingly the most common in EVE Online, is to be an FC where you operate hierarchically. And that's where the FC simply tells people in the fleet what ships to bring, what fits to fly, where to go, and what to shoot. Basically operating as a hopefully benevolent dictator. This is basically what I'll be discussing in this class. Now, I am a trained facilitator of group endeavors and group dynamics in real life. And unless you have this kind of a background, I strongly counsel against trying to run fleets autonomously or cooperatively. Particularly cooperatively. Don't turn your fleets into a committee meeting. The overwhelming majority of pilots in EVE Online will expect you as an FC to be in sole charge of your fleet and to be the boss. They expect to be told what to do, and if you don't, they'll swiftly lose respect for you and start talking over you, and your fleet will descend into chaos, I promise you. I mean, a fleet that's competently led by a hierarchical FC will enjoy a marked and usually decisive advantage over those that aren't. As I say, do not turn your fleet into or ever allow it to become a committee meeting. If you set up a fleet as you're running it, it's like that little scene from The Godfather, Godfather 3. It's your fleet, you command it, right or wrong. Okay, any questions so far? That all seems pretty straightforward, yeah? But it's important we get the basics, and that is the basics. So, here's a few more basics we can rattle through quickly, and this is to do with etiquette. As I said, well, I strongly believe that FCs should be the clear and undisputed leaders of their fleets. There's no need to let that power go to your head and start being a dick about it. Yeah, I've seen this happen quite a few times. If people, and we've all seen the videos of kind of like FCs just going capacitor because things haven't gone their well and ranting and raging at their fleets, completely unnecessary. If people are giving up their time to participate in your fleet, then the basic etiquette is they have a right to expect that you treat them with courtesy and respect. And this requirement transcends the skill and experience of the people in your fleet and applies regardless of how badly they might be playing. That's the basics. Now, Eve is obviously quite a complex game, and it's not a game for stupid and drunk people. Nevertheless, as we all know, a lot of stupid and drunk people play it. That is the reality. And if you're going to be an FC, it's a reality that you're just going to have to deal with. Having said that, you are in no way obligated to keep drunk, abusive, or disrespectful people in your fleet. Tolerate it for a little bit, and if they're clearly drunk and getting more drunk by the minute, then kick them out and move on. And don't feel in the least bit guilty about it because you've no reason to. I mean, it's worth saying that being an FC can be deeply frustrating at times. I mean, they don't call it cat herding for nothing. If you can, stay calm and remember that Eve is just a game. However, conversely, if you're giving up your time to take responsibility for other people's entertainment, you are similarly entitled to courtesy and respect. At the very least, if you give reasonable instructions to your fleet regarding things like comms discipline, things like that, then they should comply. And if they don't, you can invite them to find their fleet content provider somewhere else. Last point on etiquette, I would say is this. When things go well in your fleet, be sure to praise your team. When they go badly, offer constructive feedback only, if at all. Never get salty and rage at your fleet about losing a fight. There are 101 reasons why a fight might go badly in EVE Online. Many of them are outside of the control of both the FC and the fleet members. And the flip side to that is, as an FC, you need never feel bad about losing a fight. You're going to lose loads of them, and that's the nature of EVE, and you're just going to have to get over that as an FC. Any questions about etiquette or any additions, comments? No? Okay. Then let us move on. So this getting close to the bit where I'll start doing some stuff. So this is all considerations really in the section really before we begin. These are things that you need to bear in mind. But now we're getting to more the sort of the bits and pieces of gameplay, as the etiquette and psychology. Before you set up a fleet, you need to make some decisions. You need to, first of all, you need a rough destination or an area you're going to operate in. There has to be some reason, some rationale behind that. I would strongly recommend, this isn't essential. I mean, some fleets are for shits and giggles. I understand that, but if you're taking it a little bit seriously, then I think it's helpful to have an overall objective for the fleet and for you as an FC to know what it is. What are you trying to achieve here? You're going to go hunting for stuff in low-sec? You're going to go on a structure bash? You're going to go suicide ganking? What is it that you're trying to achieve here? And what flows from that is maybe what roles in the fleet you want covered. Maybe you want a squad of just purely damage ships, DPS ships. Maybe you want some tackles, some logistics, some E-war, stuff like that. What ship classes do you want to take with you? Do you want to take frigates only, cruisers, battleships, whatever? What specific ship hulls do you want? Do you want to roam with prophecies and vexers, or do you want to roam with caracals and kestrels? What specific fits do you want? You may have that requirement as well. Many FCs do. And finally, the basics of before we begin, you need to know what comms you're going to use. And that in RVB's case is quite straightforward. We always use Discord. It should go without saying, but you cannot FC by typing text. As an absolute minimum, you need to check out before you head off that all the members of the fleet can hear your voice. Otherwise, things are not going to go well. Okay, any questions on that bit? All good so far?
Yeah, I think
Yep.
so.
Splendid. Okay, now let's actually get into the business, prospective FCs of setting up a fleet. So you can, if you can all hop into the stream now and see what I'm up to. If you're not there already, so just go and watch the stream. Can you all see me now? Spinning my synesis. Okay, I'll assume you can all see what I'm doing. So let's okay. Well, we are right here on the west coast of Ireland, but I mean, it may be the connections in between, but yeah. I'll try and sort of talk you through the bits I'm doing as well as showing them to you. So. Roger that. Okay, so to set up a fleet in Red versus Blue Water anywhere, first of all, we go up here to the Neocon menu. Then we go down to Social and Fleet. So this could be a little bit stilted as I wait. Yeah. Okay, so the fleet window is up. So going to be clicking on the 3 little bars here at the top. A little pop-up box says Fleet Actions. We left click on it. And we form fleet. You've got 2 options, form fleet and form fleet with a setup. And we're going to come back to setups in a minute. So first of all, form a fleet. Second you do that, 2 things happen. The fleet window pops up, and so there's the chat window for the fleet, which pops up down here. One thing you can do while you're here is to go back to the 3 little bars, click on it, and you can set free move. Now what does that mean? That means that within the fleet window, your fleet members can move themselves up and down any squads and wing commander positions that you have. It's useful. I can't see many reasons why you wouldn't want to do that. If you, I'm going to add a couple of squads here for reasons that will become clear in a moment. So if you want to add an additional squad, you can only have so many people in each squad. So you can right click on the wing and create a new squad.
When would you use wings and when would you use squads?
That's a bit of a complicated one. It's usually more applicable to much bigger fleets. So when we had the EU war and we took a couple of hundred up to fight a squabble over their pods, it was a bit complicated the way we arranged it. It was to do with the voice. So I don't really want to get into that right now. For the purposes of being an RVBFC, the wing function is largely redundant. You're not going to need to set up another wing because you're not going to have the number. You're not going to have the numbers. So if you want to name any of these things, so if you want to name this squad, you can right click on it, change the name. This can be useful if you want to split up the functions of your fleet, like DPS, Logi, and tackle, and things like that. So I'm going to call this first one DPS. Oops, I've done that already. That's cool. I'm going to call this next one, what should we call it? Call this one tackle. And maybe we'll add one more for Logi. There we go. Now I'm going to change the name of this wing as well. The reason that I'm doing this is that you can, all of these changes that I'm making, you can save via the store. You can save as a fleet setup and then load it afterwards, but it won't let you do it until the wing and the squads all have individual names. So you have to do it even if you want to save the setup, you have to give these things names anyway. So there we go. Our fleet is up. We've given all our squads a name. Next thing we're going to do, if we want to get things rolling, is we're going to think about posting a fleet advert. Now, to do that, we need to hop across here to the Fleet Finder tab. And then within Fleet Finder, you can see there are two tabs here. The first one is Find Fleets, and the second one, counterintuitively, is My Advert. And then at the bottom, we click Create Advert. So this is already set up for Secret Vampires on Wednesday. So remember the settings. So you can see here's pretty straightforward. You've got the fleet name, got a description. You can possibly put something more informative than chop chop in yours. And over here, we have settings that are related to who can see and join the fleet. So I'm not sure how clear the resolution is, but what I've done is it says here open fleet to my corporation. I've also set the minimum standing to good, and I've also allowed people to join the fleet based on standings where the minimum standing is good. Now, if you're setting up a fleet in Red versus Blue in this way so that everybody can see it, in order for the people in the other two corporations that you're not in, so if you're in the Academy, in order for people in the Blue Republic and Red Federation to be able to see it, you need to set your personal standing to both Blue Republic and Red Federation to good, otherwise they won't see the advert, okay? So how do we do that? Just hop into Red versus Blue Flight Academy chat, find someone in the corp that you're not in, and this for me it would be Aris. He's in the Academy and I'm not. Show the info about his character and then click on the info about his corp. And at the bottom, you can see here, edit contact. If you don't have a contact set up with the two corps, that will say add contact. But if you click on add contact or edit contact, then it will show you, gives you the option to set your standing, and you need to set it to good for the two corps that you're not in. Okay. The next thing that you need to do is to write the message of the day in Fleet Chat. Now, what's the message of the day? The message of the day is what pops up in Fleet Chat when you join the fleet. So you can see here at the moment, if I just bring up this window, there is no message of the day. The way that you set it is that you, in Fleet Chat, you go to this little cog wheel here, channel settings, left click, open channel setting window. And that will bring you up a dialog box and you can type whatever you like, click OK, and that will be the message of the day. Now I have various fleet setups already loaded. So I'm going to load one that I did earlier. Let's load the one I did for Caldari Vampires. You can see here, I've got the name of the fleet, and what I've done is that I have given a list of fits that I want. I've given links to the fit so that people can have a look at it. I have said how many of each type of fit I would like, assuming a total of about 20. So for Caldari Vampires, I wanted a couple of Instalockers, some Logi, some initial tackle and some DPS ships. And I've given 2 categories of fits. These are called advanced, which are T2 fits, quite expensive. And these are the basic fits: Merlins, Coraxes, Caracals that will all fit to T1, and most people ought to be able to fly. Now, this bit you need to be awake for, okay? Because I'm going to ask you to do this in a minute. Once you've got your fleet set up and your MOTD written, if you're going to be using a lot of this information again, it's really tiresome to have to keep retyping and typing all the same information all over again. So Eve provides you with a way of saving this information. So you open the fleet window, you go to the 3 little buttons, left click, and you can, it says here, store fleet setup. Left click on it, and it gives you an option, a dialog box. You can, so you can call it whatever you like. My new fleet or whatever. And it gives you 2 further tick boxes. The first one, which you definitely want to tick, allows you to include the current message of the day, which is an enormously useful labor-saving device. You tick that, and to include the current free move setting, which is useful as well. So why set it if you don't have to? It saves you forgetting it. Tick that. Click OK. Now, in future, when you come back to load your fleet, all you have to do is to put up a basic fleet, go back up to the 3 little bars, click it, go to fleet setups about halfway down, and then it will give you a list of ones that you want to load. Let's try loading Gallente Vampires. Ta-da! I don't have to type anything. It's already typed for me. So the next time I come to run something purely for Gallente, I can just load this, and I've already done all the work. I don't need to do it all again. Okay, any questions about that? Because we're getting to the point where I want you guys to start doing some stuff, which should be fun. No? Okay, cool.
Where do you find your saved setup?
Where do I find what, sorry?
Where like, when we look for your setup, where do we find it?
Okay, so if you load the fleet window, so the social, fleet.
Yeah.
3 little bars, okay, left click.
I see 2 little bars, not 3 little bars.
I think I can count. 3 little bars for me anyway. It might not be very good. My graphics might be letting me down there. 3 little bars.
At the top left, is it?
That's it. Yep, top left. You'll see some bars. As soon as you click it, it'll bring up this dialog box, and about 3/4 of the way down, fleet setups. And then if you saved one, there'll be an arrow across, and you can select one. Yeah, so I've got a bunch of fleet setups already done because I spent too much of my life FC, obviously.
That won't give us your setup, though, would it?
Okay. Sorry, say again?
That won't give us your setup, would it?
No, it won't. No. You have to create a setup in order to save one. Yeah?
Yeah.
No, it won't. No, they're not savable between players. So I can't save them for the corp or anything like that. That's a good question, interestingly. So you can click this little button here, Setups Overview, as well. And that allows you to get rid of ones that are obsolete and you don't need to be looking at anymore. Okay, this is particularly aimed at those people who typed NX in general public chat earlier to indicate that they are either semi-seriously or seriously considering becoming an FC. What I would like you to do now is to spend the next 10 minutes or so setting up a fleet, okay? Setting the MOTD, saving it, just as I have done there. Posting your fleet advert so that we can see it, and then what I will do then is I'll be looking for some of you just to show me your to stream your screen so I can have a look at what you've put in your MOTD, what ships you were thinking about taking, and what information you put in there, so we can sort of talk through it a bit. Is that clear? Stunned silence.
it's clear for me.
Okay, so what I want people in this class to do now is to set up a fleet, write the MOTD, save your fleet setup, and I'm going to come back in 10 minutes or so and see how you're getting on. Okay. Okay, you can beavers, then go to it. I shall be back shortly.
Anyone
Okay.
got the hold music ready to go?
Yeah, I'm back if anyone has any questions while they're at it. So take your time. No need to rush. So just have a think about what type of fleet do you want to run first of all. What you want to call your fleet. Think of a snazzy name for it. You know, Death Rattles, Death March, or something. And what kind of what ship classes do you want people to bring? How many of each type? That kind of thing. Give us, and if you have some fits available, then link them. You know, if you don't worry about it. That's fine. Do you want to go kitey? Do you want to go brawly? Information typed in your message of the day is going to save you a hell of a lot of time repeating yourself as people dribble into your fleet in bits and pieces.
You might need to do a separate class on how to read the MOTD though.
Well, yeah, it goes to that saying that nobody reads it. Of course, nobody reads it. Yes, tune in next week for how to read. Yeah. So when you've got your fleet set up, make sure you post a fleet advert as well, so that we can all see it. And what we'll do is I'll pick a victim, and we'll join their fleet and have a look at your. Make sure that we can see your fleet advert. We'll hop in your fleet and have a look at the MOTD and talk through a few of them. People are busy doing their setting up their fleets and writing their MOTDs.
We're doing.
Yeah, see, well, that's what we're doing. I've invited people to go and set up a fleet, post a fleet advert, and write an MOTD as if they were setting up their fleet. So that's what they're doing.
This one is quiet. I sort of suggested this last week. I'll suggest it again, and maybe in community meeting tomorrow. Maybe you've already got plans for after this session already, but we have enough people that we could do I'll be the actual fleet fight after this.
Could be.
So I'll be the actual earlier.
So what I should start seeing soon when I'm bashing the fleet finder button is people's fleet adverts popping up one by one. If I don't, something's gone wrong. Oh, there's Jeremy's. Jeremy's there. Well done. John's advert is there. Cool. That's been done, didn't it?
And you just
I
notice
think
that
it-
checkbox in the Fleet Finder that filters it down to only things that are relevant. So I don't have to look at all these fleets that definitely not just there to
Yeah.
scan Libros.
Yeah, you can filter out the things that are not available to you by setting the distance to within 5 jumps.
There's also a checkbox there, only show adverts from your groups and public feeds requiring positive standings.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm struggling to put fits in there. Oh, the MOTD, that was it. Okay.
No problem. Well, how far have you got, friend?
I'm just looking for the set MOTD. Where was that?
Okay, so once you've got the, you need to go down into Fleet Chat. It's a bit counterintuitive because it would be more logical to have it within the fleet settings, but it isn't there. You need to go into the Fleet Chat window itself, and you will see a little cog wheel in the top left-hand corner, and that's channel settings. Left click on that, and then you will see one of the options is open channel setting window.
Yes, that is counterintuitive.
There it is. Yeah, welcome to Eve. And there it is. Okay, so I'm seeing one. Okay. Let's see. We're starting to get there now. Okay. So I can see Correlations, Jeremy's, John's, Wotan's. Who else is up there anyway? Okay. Let's see some more free adverts, people. If you don't know how to do it, then talk to us, ask us questions.
What range did you set for the fleets?
It's not relevant to you setting it up. It's relevant to looking at the things in Fleet Finder for now. I would say just put, if you see in Fleet Finder, there are 3 tabs that list. You can set the My Available Fleets, Corp, Alliance, and based on standings. For now, to avoid confusion, I'd say just leave it to My Available Fleets. Any distance, any standing. I can pick the bones out of that, no problem.
I'm not quite sure why you don't see mine.
Okay, who are you?
Joanna McQueen.
Okay.
And that's why I asked, because I'm in a wormhole right now.
That won't be relevant. I've put any distance, any standing. So it's probably that you need to. It's probably a standings issue.
Ah, yeah, I set my standings to good, so you might be from another corporation.
That's right. So
Yes.
I'm presuming you're in the academy, are you?
Yes.
Okay, so you need to set your. You need to edit your contact, or you need to add a contact for Red Federation and Blue Republic, and set that contact to good standing. I'll leave the way I've got my advert set up in the stream, okay? But if your personal standing isn't set to good, then it will all count for naught. So 5 more minutes tops, and then we'll see what we've got. But if we can't post a fleet advert, we've fallen. You've fallen at the first hurdle. So if anybody else needs help, just shout or type a question in general public chat.
How do you save the fleet?
Okay, if you want to save the fleet settings,
Yeah.
so you go back up to the little bars again.
Yeah.
And you'll see about halfway down where it says Store Fleet Setup. Okay.
Oh, I got ya.
It won't let you do that until you name the wings and the squad. Okay, now we're getting there. 3 more minutes, and then we'll see what we've got.
How do we include fittings again?
Okay, that's a good question. So there are a number of ways you could do that. The way I tend to do it is to open the fitting window. So, for example, if I wanted to include this Synesis fit, you need to open up the channel setting window and then drag the fit into that chat and then save it. So let me show you. So first of all, go into Fleet Chat, open on the cog wheel, open channel setting window. There's my MOTD. If I wanted to drag an additional fit, I just left click on here and drag it across. This isn't going to let me because it's absolutely chock-a-block for text down to the last character. But that's how you would do it if you had less fits listed already.
But you said these setups are saved so that I don't have to do them again and again and again.
Exactly. Yeah. If you save the MOTD and all the stuff that you've typed and all the fits you've listed by going into Fleet and then Store Setup, next time you come to load it, it'll all be there for you. You can just one click and it's all done.
It's quite interesting how when you paste a fit, the character count goes up by like a few hundred. It's just like pasting all the text of the fit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's super annoying actually.
It's posting some HTML. I think if you like copy that link and paste it outside of Eve, you'll see what it's actually pasting.
Yeah, it's not super annoying that it has the functionality. It's annoying that the character limit exists on the MOTD.
Do we need to, once we've created our setup, do we then need to do create advert?
Yep, that's sorry, but it will. There's no way to save the advert, but it will remember the details of the last advert that you posted, which isn't necessarily terribly helpful. But at least if you're running the same fleet twice, it'll all be there because you've done it before. And it will remember the settings for the standings and stuff more helpfully. Okay, let's have a look at what we've got. So, has everybody saved their fleet setup? That's the thing, because that's going to be important. This isn't going to work if you haven't. So if you're not clear about how to save your fleet setup, now is the time. Just to go through it one more time, you just from the fleet window, click on the three little bars, store fleet setup, give it a name, tick the boxes, and click OK. Then when you come to load it again, from the three little bars again, click it, fleet setups, and it'll be one of the fleet setups listed. And you just need to left click. If I click that one, it should load the MOTD for the PvP practice, and indeed so it has. Okay, it's victims time. Who shall be our first victim? So obviously we've got to pick on the people who had the temerity to X up. So in let's try Wotan's first. Let's try Wotan's. So guys, I'd like you to leave your fleet now, please, and I'd like you to hop into Wotan's fleet, Wotan Crate's fleet, the Wombles, it's called. So let's leave your fleet and join Wotan's fleet. Everybody hop into Wotan's fleet. Let's have a look what we've got here. So everybody leave your fleet. You should be able to see Wotan's fleet down Fleet Finder and hop into the Wotan's fleet and we'll have a look. It's not absolutely necessary for everybody to hop into it. I guess you can look at it on the stream.
I actually don't see Wotan's fleet in the Fleet Finder.
Okay. Okay, Wotan, that might need working on. You just want to make sure, Wotan, that you have your standings for the academy. Hang on, go in the academy here.
I've got everybody set as excellent at the moment. So.
Okay. So, is the advert set up by standings? Yeah.
Let me check.
Because it won't be enough to do it by corp. You'll have to set it by standings also, and it's a bit counterintuitive because it mentions standings twice. It's the second one that's the more important.
So I had that checked off, so I've just checked it on, so people should see it.
Okay, try it now.
Now I see Wotan's fleet.
Okay, hop into Wotan's fleet. This is all good practice. Okay. There we go. Is that a quote from somewhere then, Wotan?
Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, okay. Oh, of course. How silly of me.
The proper one as well, not the new one.
Okay, so I trust that everyone's either in the fleet or is looking via the stream. So let's have a look. So we've got the Conan Barbarian quote. Obviously need that. So and we've got which suggested which says fits for DPS, Logi, and a scout. Okay. Chase, what's nothing going to be given away free? Yes, that's the question, the new question you get in RVB in the new era. So, okay, let's have a look at your Firetail. So we've got.
Oh, yeah, just chuck them in. They're not that good.
It's all good. Firetail. So we go. Okay. You haven't given any indication there on kind of where you're going, which I guess is okay. I guess you can dispense with that quite soon. Interesting that you link a scout fit because that wouldn't necessarily occur to me. So that's a good tip. I might do that myself next time out. Okay, going for an interceptor. That's cool. Okay. So let's try. That all looks fine to me. That all seems to be working cool.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I don't see the MOTD of this fleet. I joined the fleet and I tried reloading MOTD, but it doesn't show.
Are you still in your fleet?
I'm not.
That's strange. I can see it, definitely. That is a puzzler. I don't have an answer to that one. Can everyone else see the MOTD?
Yes.
That does seem a bit odd. You're definitely in fleet chat, yeah?
Yes, I'm the last one on the list.
Try reloading the MOTD.
I tried twice.
Then I'm absolutely a lost friend. I really
broke
don't
it.
know. I really
broke
don't
it, it's
know
broken.
why that's happening. That is a strange one.
Try leaving the fleet and coming back just to see. You know, sometimes it's
Yeah,
something like that.
maybe quit the fleet and come back.
Yeah, guess that will work.
I think kudos to Vex as well, as he's the only one that's dropped down into the don't kill wing, as opposed to the expendable wing, like everybody else.
Hey, I've got survival skills here.
I was gonna say you should get promotion for that.
Yeah, so everyone else has not noticed that they're in the they're in the Star Trek red shirts. Yeah. So did we fix that MOTD thing?
How do I join the fleet? How do I join the fleet?
So from Fleet Finder, well, it'd be worth practice if you could just drag your advert across into Red versus Blue Flight Academy chat, Wotan, yeah?
Yes,
Sorry, how
reloading did the job.
How do I drag the fleet advert?
Okay, so all you do is from Fleet Finder, left click on the advert and just drag it across. So basically where it says Wotan, you just highlight the row and just drag it across. Left click and drag it.
Yeah, okay. Done it.
There you go. So if you haven't joined the fleet yet, you can now. That's another thing that you need to do if you're setting up a fleet in RVB, is push your advert up and then start spamming our channels, Red versus Blue Flight Academy chat, RVB community, with the advert so that people know that there's a fleet heading out and it's open for business.
Cool.
What do you do at Fleet Finder?
Okay, Fleet Finder. If you go into social and fleet,
Where's social fleet?
Fleet Finder is on the right hand side.
I've got. Oh yeah, my advert.
Bash the button and you should see Wotan's fleet there. The one balls has got 15 people in it. Oh, Jace is doing a pointer. Good for you, Jace. Okay, well that all seems to be working well. Let's pick another victim. We'll do 2 or 3 more, so most of you are going to escape. Let's try John Shelby. So, if everybody could leave Wotan's fleet, and John, if you could set up your fleet again and load your setup that you saved, and we'll hop into your fleet, okay? Everybody leave that fleet. So everybody needs to leave Wotan's fleet, and we'll wait for John Shelby's advert to appear in a moment. Are you with us there, John?
Mm-hmm.
Splendid.
Just a second.
Also good, friend. Don't take your time.
Whose fleet are we joining?
We're going to join John Shelby's fleet shortly. There it is. I can see it. Can everybody see it there? John Shelby, Red Fleet.
Yes.
Hop into that.
I can't see John Shelby.
Okay, what corp are you in?
I'm looking in the Fleet Finder.
Okay, you might need to refresh the Fleet Finder. Okay, so you it's a static page unless you refresh it. So bash the Find Fleets button again, and it will refresh the page. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, John, I'm not seeing your message of the day,
abandoned.
friend.
Yeah, I have for some reason 2 fleets saved and one is without.
Okay,
Just a
load,
second.
it's okay. You can load the other one while this is up. That's fine. So if you click on the bars and then go to fleet setups, it should be one of a list.
Oops. Okay.
There we go. Well done, friend.
Okay,
Well done.
thank
Well
you.
done indeed. Okay, so we've got limited use set. The fleet advert is up. We've got brawlers for fits for brawlers, tacklers, and kiters. And looks like we're going cruiser down. So splendid, excellent, well done. We'll do one more. Let's take a volunteer. Anybody want to volunteer?
I would
If you
love to volunteer.
Who's that?
Foliation.
Foliation. Okay, splendid. Okay, so everybody leave this fleet, and we'll shortly hop into Foliation's fleet. So leave this fleet. So if you could shut your fleet down, John, kick everybody out and leave. I hit the refresh button on the fleet finder, and we'll wait for Foliation's fleet to pop up.
There's a refresh button.
Well, find fleets, that's effectively what it is.
Nice.
Okay, there it is. So hop into Foliation's fleet. Goodness me. Boom. There we are. There it is. Fleet is up. Everybody can see it. And we're going small gang rockets, Sprigs, lovely jubbly. We've got Kestrels, Condors, form up in Tadaki, which is a useful thing to have in an MOTD. It wasn't in the other two. So on the NPC station. Perfect.
What
Well
is the
done.
part?
Go ahead.
What is the part in the fleet that says tackle? Is that another squad?
Yeah, there's a. Well,
It's
he's
less than damage,
yeah.
and then there's tackle, which is empty, but I can't join there.
It's interesting. It is another squad, yeah. It may be that free move isn't set, so
Oh yeah, I didn't set free move.
that's fine.
Oh,
so
okay.
you don't have to. That's why you can't move into it at the moment. Okay, perfect. So I think, are there any questions? Any more questions about that? Are we all cool about how to form a fleet, post an advert, and save your setup?
Yep, all good.
Very good, splendid. Okay, let's move on. There's a few other bits and pieces that I've got to say. This is going to be one of 4 classes, so I'm going to be running a class for another same time, same day for another 3 weeks, where we'll go into some of these topics in more detail. But this is just to go over a few general points, and then we'll get a bit more specific in later classes. So, okay. So, we're assuming then that our fleet set up, your message of the day is written, you know where you're going, you know what you're about, your advert is posted, and people are starting to join. Obviously, you now need to be in whatever comms you have chosen set up, ready for people to join. Do check that as people are joining the fleet that they can actually hear you, and obviously respond to questions as people ask them, as people rarely actually read the MOTD you've so carefully crafted. Next thing you need to do is to undock and walk to a safe, and then you can ask fleet members to warp to you once they are ready. So, quick question for you. Well, why do you ask people, particularly in RVB, to gather at a safe rather than at the station? Do you have any idea why that is?
I guess because like there could just be random other people on the station. So if you get everyone to warp to you, you like see exactly who's in your fleet.
Spies.
Yep, that's basically we covered the 3 reasons. The additional reason is if you park an RVB fleet gathering at the station, they'll endlessly mess about, and dick about, docking and undocking and fiddling with their fits and fitting different ammo and all sorts of things. It doubles the amount of time you have to form your fleet. Walk them to a safe, give them a time limit, and you might actually head out vaguely on time. If you're rolling a fleet in RVB actual, you probably don't want the opposition to see you, and since you'll all be most likely forming at Red HQ, better to form your fleet elsewhere and at least keep them guessing for a little bit longer. As I say, set a time limit for the fleet to form. So as people joyfully say, look, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, warp division, we're leaving at such and such a time. If you don't set a time limit, people will move very slowly and drag their heels, and you'll be half an hour, 3/4 of an hour forming your fleet, which nobody wants. And keep repeating that time limit. I mean, try to leave on time. But I mean, bear in mind that you're dealing, particularly in RVB, at different levels of experience, and people may or may not have ships readily available. Be patient, be flexible, particularly for people that might be bringing expensive ships that you master on the MOTD and they popped a Jita to buy them for you. And then get underway. If we're in Tadaki, I would ask that all RVB fleets that are heading out into Losec form in Tadaki, you're live for the Kakagena Gate, and away we go. So, any questions about any of that? Probably not. Cool. Okay, we are getting towards the end here. Then somebody can be an FC. We can actually start practicing some of this shit. So, next section is entitled "Golden Rules of Keeping a Fleet Together." So, aside from your nominated scout, your first and top priority is to keep your fleet together at all times. You don't want to be taking on a fleet fight with half of your system, half of your fleet scattered across 3 different systems. This may seem really easy, actually isn't. People get lost, or they're not paying attention, or they set their router wrong, or whatever. So, whenever you get to a gate, you need to be scanning up and down your fleet to make sure that your fleet is actually still with you. On the subject of scouts, let's establish what a scout actually does. So that's a question. What does a scout do? What does a scout do?
They go on ahead and look for possible targets and or potential dangers.
Depends what the FC wants them to do. Scout front, scout behind.
Do you want to explain what that means?
You can set a scout on a gate, for example, to see if somebody's incoming, or some gate perch on a station somewhere.
Yeah, so you can send a scout out to go and find the enemy. You can send a scout out to make sure your path is clear. You can have a scout behind you to make sure you're not being followed, which is probably good in nullsec, I would imagine. You know, you can have a scout that's cloaky to keep an eyes on gate, and so you know what's coming into you. So it depends what you want to do with them.
Absolutely. The scout will often
you can-
also jump into a system and bash scan and see if they can find. If you're hunting as a fleet, it'll be your scout that hops into a system first. And so basically your scout are your eyes of your fleet, and there will also be typically going 1 or even 2 jumps, 2 systems ahead of the fleet's route to see if they can find a target for the rest of the fleet. Does anybody know why you would send, particularly if you're hunting for a target, why you would send the scout into a system first and not the whole fleet?
Could be ambushed on gate, and you don't want to alert other people that you're searching for possible targets.
Absolutely spot on.
Bash was saying today when we went out on a roam that like you don't want to all like spike local and then they know like a fleet's going through.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So if someone's running a faction warfare site, if they're any good at all, they're going to be keeping an eye on local. So they'll carry on running the faction warfare site if one person jumps in. But if they see 20, 25 people jumping from RVP, they're going to think, hang on a minute, what could be going on here? And they're going to straight away warp away. Okay. Choose your scouts carefully, because a low-sec fleet particularly is only really as good as its scouts. Without a decent scout, you're really struggling. So pick a scout with somebody who you communicate with well, who is concise with their information and knows what you as an FC are looking for. That's what makes for a good scout. Here's what makes for a bad scout. A bad scout is somebody who is really wants to either gives you all kinds of verbal diarrhea of information you really don't need to know about. Either they don't really know what you need. They're just giving you every piece of information they happen to come across. That's a really bad scout. Or even worse is really what they want to do is to run the fleet as a backseat driver. And so what they'll do is a bad scout will jump a couple of systems ahead and you're waiting for information and suddenly you'll hear, oh, I've got such and such a thing tackled. Warp to me, warp to me, warp to me. That's a really bad scout. Because you're two systems away. There's not much you can do to help. And they're actually running your fleet for you and giving your fleet instructions over your head. And that's something to watch out for. You need to step on that straight away. The only person that gives instructions to your fleet is you, because you're the fleet commander. If other people start doing it, you got to nip that in the bud straight away. Okay. Next up on my little list of how to keep your fleet together is always repeat instructions. Does anybody know why?
People are dumb.
Good point. Any other reasons?
Your mic could cut out for a second.
Yep, that's a good point. The biggest reason is they're not listening.
Sorry, what was that?
It's like people aren't listening to you. So, they're watching porn, they're
What?
drinking beer or whatever. And so unless you say things 2 or 3 times, you can guarantee that between 10 and 20% of the fleet hasn't even heard you. Next up, always be aligned. If your fleet needs to be on the move, it needs to be aligned. Even if you're sat at a gate, make sure that your fleet's orbiting the gate of 500. This lowers the possibility of a bunch of high DPS ships suddenly abruptly rocking up at your gate or decloaking and one-shotting, particularly your frigates in tornadoes and stuff like that. If they're moving, they might just about have a chance to get away. If they're not aligned or if they're not moving, they're just sitting ducks, basically. A few more points in this section, and then we are getting towards the end of our frivolities for this evening. How to keep under the section of golden rules, or how to keep your fleet together, which you remember is your first priority as an FC, is you have to stop people from doing their own thing. If pilots are in your fleet, then they must stay with you. If you suddenly become aware, say in a fleet of 20, that 4 or 5 people are sort of flying out ahead of you or behind you doing their own thing and say, oh, walk to me, I've got such and such. Stop it, because you're not really in control of your fleet anymore. Aside from your scout, the only place where people in your fleet need to be is with you. That's it. And if you find people are buzzing around doing their own thing, either invite them to join the fleet or combine sex with travel. Next up, if you are traveling through a number of systems in low sec, then you need to insist on some comms discipline. We'll talk a bit more about that later. And give instructions about what you want to do at a gate before you arrive at them several times. So imagine you just jumped into a system and you've got 7 or 8 low sec systems ahead of you and you're in low sec. You want to align. Your fleet is in warp. As you're in warp, in the middle of the warp, you need to be giving instructions to your fleet about what to do when they get to the gate. Don't wait until they get to the gate, because if you do, 1 or 2 of them will jump, or 5 or 6 of them will jump, whether you've asked them to or not. So mid-warp, you say, jump on contact, if that's what you want them to do, or hold on the gate. And don't say it once, say it 2 or 3 times. Hold on the gate, please, hold. And then they might actually listen to you. Now, presumably, if you want to be an FC, you must, to a certain extent, like the sound of your own voice, like me. So, but it's worth saying that there's no reason for you to be frightened of taking up most of the available airtime in comms when you're the FC. This is the reverse of how it is when you're a pilot in someone else's fleet, when you're expected to shut up. As an FC, you're expected to talk most of the time. The fleet, this is entirely appropriate, and for the fleet to have confidence in you, it needs to be hearing a steady flow of instructions from you. And silence is your enemy as an FC. It's your friend when your pilots shut up, but it's your enemy when you are silent, because if people don't hear you talking, they lose faith. So keep talking, steady flow of instructions, and that way you keep people's attention and they'll feel that you're in charge of it and they're more likely to do what you ask them to do. But conversely, don't give instructions you don't need to. If you're just moving through high sec, just let the fleet free burn to a station where you're going to gather up. I just say to them, look, if you guys chat amongst yourselves now, by all means, you know, and have a laugh. I mean, it's a social thing after all. Last 2 points in this section about keeping your fleet together. Before you make any transition from high sec to low or to no sec, it's especially important that you make sure all your fleet members are with you and active. I recommend docking at an NPC station and doing an active head count. And a final thing in this section is after any engagement, particularly if you manage to win, don't dawdle on the grid. Don't sit there chatting about this and that, or you know, sort of counting your winnings or bemoaning your losses. Get off grid to a safe and then be aligned. You can check for losses and allow people to repair and reship afterwards. The last thing you want to do is to win one fight and then lose it because you're sat there like a bunch of quacking ducks, first for another fleet to come and stomp all over you. Any questions about that little chunk?
No, all good, thank you.
Splendid. Okay, so as I say, this is kind of an express train. So I mean, we are recording it, so you can always come back and watch the video when we release it anyway. But I'm just trying to get a range of sort of basic building blocks for budding FCs. I've learned these things the hard way by doing them all wrong. So that's the benefit of a class, I guess. This is the last tranche. I call it the golden rules of engagements. The very basics. First of all, if you're going to be an FC, you must know your ship tree and the likely fits of those ships. You must know your fleet's optimal ranges and the DPS that they're putting out. If you don't know the ship tree, now I mean, your guesses about what the enemy fleet might have might be mistaken, but generally speaking, if you don't know the likely range of and the likely tank and the likely DPS of all the ships on grid, you basically cannot make any tactical decisions. So you have to know the basics of the ship tree. I would say if you're going to be an FC, the minimum that you need to know is battle cruiser down. Next up, decide quickly if you're in a fight, if you want to engage or run away. You haven't got 5 or 6 minutes to think about it. You've got to have, you've got at most 5 or 6 seconds to kind of like make that decision. Those are long seconds. It's like running away is perfectly acceptable. You know, don't think you have to take every fight. You absolutely don't. But in RVB, as an RVB FC in low sec, you should know that there's a certain cultural expectation in Red versus Blue that we err on the side of content over victory. So most RVB people would far rather you took a fight and lost it than to keep them safe all night long. But still, if you choose to run away, that's your call. I mean, I don't feel at all embarrassed about doing it. When you're on grid, you should gather similarly ranged ships to anchor on you. So, quick question, can anybody tell me what anchoring in the FC context means?
Keep it range or orbit.
Could you say a bit more?
You try to stay on the FC or on the ship that you're calling the anchor, might be a guardianship or something like that, so that everybody's keeping in the bubble and just have a point in space to anchor on and follow around, basically.
What should you be doing if you're the anchor as an FC? Yeah. Okay. I mean, really, it's a way of keeping all your DPS together. If it's similarly ranged to you, which I would warmly recommend when you're starting to FC. If you're on a Thorax and you're a novice FC, then it's a lot more complicated to try and keep your fleet where you want it on grid. If you've got half of the fleet at one range and half the fleet at another, it's far easier if you're on a Thorax to have all of the other people in your ship, in your fleet, with a similar-ish fit to you on a similar-ish range. That way, when you're looking at something to shoot, they're all pretty much looking at the same picture, and it makes it a lot easier to coordinate. So if they anchored on you, and they're in the same fit, you know that you're all basically singing from the same hymn sheet in the same place. That's the way you should play it. That's the way the Vision likes to play it pretty much all the time. I like it simple. If, as an anchor, you activate your prop mod, then you need to tell the pilots are with you to do the same, otherwise you'll leave them behind. Best way to do if you fit a micro warp drive is you'll hear FC say prop mods on, and then it also tell you, announce the number of cycles. So prop mods on 2 cycles, prop mods on 2 cycles. So they can, you're all doing the same thing at the same speed with the same fits. Goes without saying in a way, but don't ask your fleet to shoot a target which is too far out of its range. Chasing ships to apply damage is a terrible idea. If you're in a situation on grid where you're going to have to burn anything more than about 25k, I would say don't bother. Either you know, your opponents probably purposely place themselves outside of your range. If you go chasing them, they're just going to kite you and you're going to get absolutely wrecked. So if you can't warp on top of a thing or get a fleet to jump into you, I strongly recommend don't chase. We can talk more about that in another class. So we focus your fleet's fire by calling a primary and a secondary target. I'm sure a lot of you have heard me and other FCs do this quite often. And I would suggest that you keep repeating your target kind of bingo caller style. So you don't just announce a target once because maybe it's a difficult to pronounce target and people haven't heard you, or maybe they weren't listening, which is probably very likely. Blah, blah, blah. So I would say if we're calling power complete the Vigilant, which obviously we would be saying power complete the Vigilant, power complete the Vigilant, keep saying it. Secondary is such and such. As soon as the primary is down, you switch the secondary to the primary and immediately call a new secondary and keep a flow of targets moving throughout the fight so that you're, for the most part, your fleet never hears silence. Last few bits and pieces, these are all pretty basic stuff, but they are all worth saying in a basic class. When you're calling targets, you should prioritize from your knowledge of the ship tree, which you really must have, high DPS targets that have a relatively low tank that are close to you first. So if, for example, you're on a grid and you have a Prophecy, a Thorax, and a Kestrel, I would say shoot the Thorax. Don't shoot the Kestrel because it's relatively low DPS and it's going to take your fleet a long time to lock it up and destroy it. And all the while you've got a much higher DPS target than Thorax hammering you. Don't shoot the Prophecy because it's heavily tanked. Probably relatively low DPS. Be mindful of which ships can apply damage to smaller targets and split up your target calling if you need to. So, for example, if you have a chunk of battleships in your fleet, there isn't much point in asking battleships to shoot frigates because they can't do it. Ask your battleships to shoot other battleships or to shoot cruisers. Ask your cruiser down to shoot targets cruiser down. So it's perfectly reasonable and indeed essential in bigger engagements where you might have 1 or 2 battleships and stuff with you to say to call a target for battleships and to call a target for cruiser and below. Last 2 points in this one. You need to be watching the balance of the fight carefully. Okay. So if you've got the RVB overview loaded, you'll know that we have a tag for that includes all of your fleet members and all of your opposition's fleet members. Now, ordinarily, while you're calling targets, you're going to be in the tab which excludes your fleet members. But from time to time, you need to be bouncing back to have a look at how many people are in your fleet that are still alive. Don't be that FC that has to be told by his fleet members, hey, excuse me, we're all dead. That's really embarrassing. You need to know long before that happens. You need to be keeping an eye on the balance of how many ships do they have, how many ships do we have left. If it's starting to tip against you, there's absolutely no shame in saying, you know what, we're in over our heads here, lads. It's a line out and get out. So 2 more points. This is a moot point, and I've heard different points of view about this, but this has been my take on it. If you're in a fleet fight where you see logistics on grid, for the most part, shoot them first. There are reasons why you might not want to do this. I've heard arguments against this, but personally, if I see Logi on grid first, I'll shoot them first. The reason being that if you really can't break the Logi, if they're in any way good, then it doesn't really matter what target you shoot in their fleet. For the most part, you are not going to be able to break them. So if you can't break the Logi, you're not going to be able to break any of the other targets. If you can break the Logi, every chance that the fight is yours. Obviously, watch out for incoming blobs and bail the second you know you're in over your head. Okay. Any questions or comments about that? That was a lot to take in, I know, but I try to keep the classes as short as I can. I mean, we're very nearly at the end now. Questions, comments?
I would have a question.
Go ahead.
As a pilot in a fleet, I find it sometimes confusing if I should stay anchored on the FC or if I should chase the primary. So I don't know, in the last few months, I didn't hear much instructions from the FCs on this topic. So I don't know if you understand me.
I think the way that you avoid that is down to the FC. I think if you're setting out to be an FC, I would say the way to get around that is to make sure that the people in your fleet are flying the same fit as you. It's so much easier when you can do it that way. That's not what often happens in RVB. You ask for X and they give you H, B, and Z. But if it's all possible, if you're flying a Caracal, get everyone else in Caracals or Kites, or at least get the same type of ship. Yeah. And then as long as you position yourself in the right place and you've asked people to anchor on you, then everybody in the fleet is in the right place. Yeah. Otherwise, then that becomes an issue about whether you anchor or whether you don't. If you're calling a target in your ship, which is a Brawley, yeah, or in your ship if you're a Kitey and your brawler is too far away, he's somewhere else, and then he doesn't know what to do. So you're either going to have to call a target for Kites, call a target for Brawlies if you've got a model of ranges, or make sure that all of your fits are the same. If you're setting out to FC, can't stress enough, far easier just to have them all in the same fit. That does mean that you're not going to be able to take certain fights, because you don't have the flexibility. But the fights that you can take on, if you're in a Brawly fleet all set up to brawl and people coming to brawl with you, you will do well because you've got all your DPS with you and there's no confusion with anybody in your fleet about what they're supposed to be doing. Any more questions? Because as much as I enjoy the sound of my voice, that's a bit of a lie, but I'm sure you all do. There's you aren't going to have too much of a good thing, right?
No questions. Thank you, Vision. Very good.
Splendid. Okay, the last few points, and then we'll see. We'll hop back into public chat and see if anyone's going to take us out tonight. I would say don't bother with nullsec until you have a good graph of nullsec. Personally, I don't bother with it hardly at all. The only way for you to learn to be an FC is to participate in a lot of fleets as a pilot and then to just have a goal. I strongly recommend that you fly with as many different FCs as you can. So fly respectively or Bomber's Bar or whatever and see how other people do things. And the last thing I would say, only one pilot in 100 in EVE has the balls to step up and be an FC. If you step up, doesn't matter how it goes, stand tall. And anybody that FCs an RVB is enormously appreciated, and you're absolutely essential to the function of how RVB survives and prospers. Anyway, that's all, folks.
What's game time for the next class?
Sorry, say again?
What's the start time for the next class?
Our next class of this FC How to Be an FC thing will be the same time next week at 1900. Pretty much all of our events start at 1900 Eve time. So our next class will be on a Tuesday with Tomor, most likely about how to fit the ships that form the basis of our theme for next week. But I can't possibly talk about that because it's secret. Anyway, hop back into the public and we'll see if we'll get a fleet out. So, bye-bye.